Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to explore some of the most vital ideas and research, really getting into the core insights you need. And today, we're tackling something truly fundamental. It sits right underneath, all the debates about schools, colleges, how we train people. What is the actual goal of education? Like, what are we fundamentally trying to achieve?
It's a huge question, and right now the conversation feels, well, it feels dominated by a kind of anxiety, doesn't it? If you listen to policymakers or, business leaders, the mission seems almost purely utilitarian.
Utilitarian.
Meaning it's all about economic growth, workforce development, making sure people can compete. We sort of treat schools and universities like factories designed to boost GDP and give individuals an edge in the job market.
Yeah, and that focus really shapes how we measure success, right?
Yep.
We obsess over graduation rates, standardized test scores, what starting salaries alumni are getting. All those metrics, they point towards a system that values measurable skills and, market readiness above almost everything else.
It's like the implicit deal is go to school, learn to be efficient, get a good job, get paid. Simple.
Simple, but maybe incomplete.
Exactly. That's where our source material comes in. It argues that this dominant view, while it definitely addresses real practical needs, is fundamentally missing something crucial, and potentially it's even dangerous. We're looking at a really powerful corrective argument from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It's from an essay he wrote way back in 1947.
1947, wow.
Yeah, for the Morehouse College student newspaper, the Maroon Tiger. Even then, as a student, he saw this risk. He saw the danger in focusing only on that economic efficiency part.
Okay, so almost 80 years ago, he's already warning about this. What was the specific warning? What did he say?
Well, he starts by agreeing that education must teach people to think deeply, to think critically. That part's essential, non-negotiable. But then comes a line that just hits like a thunderclap, and it's really the core of our deep dive today, he wrote. Education which stops with efficiency may prove the greatest menace to society.
The greatest menace. That's incredibly strong language. Efficiency, the thing we prize, could be the biggest threat.
That's his warning. He's saying competence alone isn't enough. It needs direction. And then he gives us the blueprint, the actual goal. He says, intelligence plus character. That is the goal of true education.
Intelligence plus character.
Yeah.
Okay, that completely reframes the whole purpose, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So our mission today for you listening is to really unpack this. We need to move beyond those surface-level debates about test scores. We're going to deconstruct these two pillars King identified: intelligence and character. We need to look closely at why separating them is so dangerous, and ultimately argue, based on this source, that combining them isn't just nice to have, it's absolutely essential. It's about creating, complete human beings, not just skilled workers.
Exactly. And King's perspective isn't just some abstract philosophy here. It's really a practical challenge to how we design our educational institutions. It's all about ensuring that the power we cultivate through intelligence, well, that it's always, always guided by a strong moral compass.
All right, so let's tackle that first pillar, intelligence. And just to be clear, we're not dismissing it. King certainly wasn't. It's absolutely vital. But we really need to pin down what kind of intelligence we're aiming for here. Because the blueprint makes it clear this isn't just about, memorizing facts for a test.
No, absolutely not. That's the critical difference. The goal isn't to churn out walking encyclopedias or people who are just good at information recall. It's about forging a mind that is fundamentally critical, agile, capable of genuine creative thinking and problem solving. This kind of intelligence is really the source of human power, isn't it? It's what lets us shape the world around us, for better or for worse.
And the sources really zero in on one component as being maybe the most vital part of this. Critical thinking. You could almost call it the interrogator. It's not just knowing things. It's the ability to really look at information, dissect arguments, see the assumptions hidden underneath, and evaluate the evidence rigorously. It's about asking tough questions.
Right. An educated mind in this framework can't just be passive. It shouldn't just accept information. It has to interrogate it constantly, asking why. Why is this the way it is? How? How did we get this result? And maybe most importantly today, says who? Who is telling me this? What's their stake in it? And what actual proof do they have?
And this interrogator skill, It's not just academic, is it? It feels incredibly relevant, almost like a survival skill for modern life.
Oh, absolutely essential. It's fundamental for democratic citizenship. I mean, think about the sheer volume, the sophistication of information and disinformation that bombards us every single day. Critical thinking is like the only reliable firewall we have against manipulation. Without that basic intellectual competence, people become incredibly vulnerable.
Vulnerable to what, specifically?
To sophisticated propaganda, to demagogues who play on our fears, to carefully crafted narratives designed to polarize and confuse. The source argues this isn't some soft skill, it's a hard necessity. It's crucial for keeping society stable, especially now.
Okay, but let me push on that a bit. Can someone be really intelligent, really critical in analyzing information, but still fall for, say, an emotional appeal or manipulation if it aligns with their own interests?
But that's exactly the tension King is getting at. Yes, intelligence without character can be critical, but it might remain self-serving. It might even see through manipulation, but go along with it if it advances personal ambition. But we're still building up Pillar 1 here. So critical thinking gives you the analytical engine. Building on that, the next piece is what we could call intellectual agility and problem solving.
Right.
Let's call it applied efficiency.
Right, the practical side. So it's not enough to just analyze. You have to be able to use that thinking to tackle real, messy problems that aren't in the textbook.
Exactly. It's about equipping students to face complex, novel challenges head-on, things that don't have easy answers. It could be something abstract, like working through a tough mathematical proof or a new scientific puzzle. Or it could be intensely practical. Like figuring out how to address a deep-seated social injustice, or manage a really complex global supply chain crisis, or even build a solid ethical business plan. The key is applying a structured, reasoned approach, but also being flexible enough to adapt when things inevitably go sideways. This is the positive side of that efficiency King mentioned.
So this is the competence that lets us actually do things. Build bridges, cure diseases, write laws, run businesses.
Precisely. It's the competence that makes progress possible. It allows us to translate clear thinking into effective action in the real world.
Okay, so we have critical thinking, the interrogator. We have applied efficiency, the problem solver. What's the third component of intelligence here?
Intellectual curiosity. You could think of it as the engine that drives the whole process.
The engine.
Yeah. It's about cultivating a mind that doesn't just know how to learn, but that genuinely wants to learn. A mind that has a deep intrinsic desire to understand things, just for the sake of understanding. It's what turns education from, a chore you have to get through measured by grades into a lifelong journey.
Can you give an example of that kind of curiosity?
Well, the sources point to historical examples. It's the force that made Newton look at a falling apple and ask why, when everyone else just saw an apple falling. And it's the same kind of deep, maybe even moral curiosity that pushes activists to question an unjust system, even when it seems completely unchangeable. It's that drive to look deeper, to understand the why behind things, even if there's no immediate payoff.
That distinction is key, isn't it? The desire to learn versus just the ability to learn. One feels much more powerful, more transformative.
It really is.
Okay, so let's sum up Pillar 1. Intelligence, understood this way, is this indispensable toolkit. It gives us critical thinking, practical problem-solving skills, and the curiosity to keep learning. It arms us with competence and power. But, and this feels like the crucial transition, this leads us right back to King's really sobering question. We develop all this power, these sharp tools, but to what end? How will this power actually be used?
And that question, to what end, leads us straight into the second pillar. Character. If intelligence gives us the how, the ability to act effectively, then character provides the why. It gives the reason, the direction, the moral purpose behind the action.
So it's like the internal guidance system, the moral compass.
Exactly. It's the ethical foundation. It acts like a gyroscope, keeping you oriented towards a kind of true north, ethically speaking, even when external pressures are pushing you off course.
Pressures like ambition, fear, just going along with the crowd.
All of those. Character is what should provide that internal consistency, that ethical bedrock, when the world is tempting you or pressuring you to compromise your values.
Okay, so what specific qualities make up this character pillar, according to the sources? What needs to be cultivated?
Well, the absolute foundation, the starting point for all of it, is integrity and honesty. This isn't just about not telling lies. It's about a deep commitment to aligning what you believe and value internally with how you actually behave externally.
That sounds simple, but it plays out in really concrete ways, even early on in education, doesn't it?
Absolutely. For a student, it starts with basic academic honesty, doing your own work, citing sources properly, refusing to cheat or plagiarize. It's about internalizing the idea that the process of learning and discovering truth is actually more important than just getting the highest grade by any means necessary.
And then as you move into professional life, how does integrity manifest there?
Well, it becomes about things like refusing to mislead clients or customers, insisting on transparency in your dealings. Critically, it's about the refusal to manipulate data, cut corners on safety, or fudge results even when doing so might be more profitable or convenient, or help you climb the ladder faster.
So character means putting principle over expediency.
That's a good way to put it. Convenience becomes irrelevant when a core principle is at stake. And importantly, this isn't just about individuals. The sources stress that institutional integrity matters too. How does the school, the company, the organization itself behave?
Okay, so integrity is foundational. What comes next?
Next is empathy and compassion. And this is more than just, feeling sorry for someone. It's the genuine capacity to share in another's feelings. And crucially, to make the effort to see the world from their perspective, especially if their life is very different from your own.
And education has a role in actively developing this capacity. How?
Yes, a huge role. And the source material points to something often undervalued here: engaging deeply with narrative art and history. Think about studying literature. When you really immerse yourself in a novel, you're essentially living inside someone else's head for a while. You're experiencing their motivations, their struggles, their moral choices, maybe from a completely different culture or time period.
You're forced to feel what they feel.
Exactly. It stretches your moral imagination. And history, when taught well, does the same thing. It's not just learning dates and names. It's about understanding the why behind historical actions, the motivations, the fears, the suffering, the difficult ethical compromises people faced in contexts totally different from our own. Both literature and history are powerful tools for building empathy.
So integrity, empathy. What else is essential for character?
Moral courage. This one is critical because it's the bridge between knowing and doing. It's the difference between privately thinking something is wrong and actually acting on that belief, especially when doing so involves risk.
Risk-like.
Risk of opposition, ridicule, losing your job, losing status, financial loss. Moral courage is integrity under pressure.
It separates the quiet bystander from the person who actually steps up and leads, even when it's hard.
Precisely. And again, institutions have a role here. The sources argue schools shouldn't just talk about courage. They need to actively nurture it, celebrate examples of it, and importantly, model it themselves in their own decision-making, especially when faced with political or financial pressure. It's about making character active, not passive.
Okay, anything else?
Yes, resilience and fortitude. Sometimes people call this grit. Character isn't just about a single moment of ethical action. It's about sustaining that ethical commitment over time, especially when things get tough or you face setbacks.
So it's about not giving up on your principles when you fail or face obstacles.
Right. It's about seeing failure, whether it's a moral lapse you need to correct or a project that didn't work out, not as a final judgment, but as a chance to learn and recommit. It's the perseverance needed to stick with a difficult but ethically worthy goal over the long haul.
And finally,
Tying all these together is social responsibility. This is the fundamental recognition that your life, your talents, and especially your intelligence are not just for your own benefit. They're connected to the well-being of others. The sources frame this almost as a kind of moral trust.
you trust, meaning
Meaning that if you've had the privilege of developing your intelligence, you have a responsibility to use that competence not just for personal gain, but for the betterment of your community, society, even the world. The question a person of character asks isn't just, what's in it for me? It's, given what I know and what I can do, what is my responsibility here? How can I contribute?
Okay, so pulling this pillar together. Character is this combination of integrity, empathy, courage, resilience, and social responsibility. It provides the why, the moral direction for the how that intelligence gives us.
You could say it's the conscience of the intellect. It's what ensures the power of the mind is used for good.
All right, now we get to the really alarming part of the argument. This is where King's warning about the greatest menace starts to hit home with full force. If intelligence is power, and character is the moral compass guiding that power, what happens when you cultivate immense power but completely neglect the compass.
Well, that's precisely the scenario King feared most. That's the recipe for menace. If our education systems focus only on developing high intelligence, efficiency, technical skill, we're essentially just sharpening tools. We're making people more effective at achieving whatever goals they set for themselves, but without instilling any framework for ensuring those goals are actually worthy or ethical or beneficial to society.
And the result is?
The result is you potentially create highly effective criminals, sophisticated fraudsters, manipulative leaders, people who use their sharpened intellect for destructive or purely self-serving ends.
The source material points to history here, particularly the 20th century, as a kind of chilling case study.
Yes, it forces us into a really uncomfortable reckoning. The 20th century saw unprecedented advances in technology and arguably the highest levels of formal education across populations in history. More university degrees than ever before. And yet, it was also the bloodiest century on record. Industrialized warfare, genocide on an unimaginable scale, totalitarian regimes, systematic oppression.
So the most educated century was also the most brutal. That's a stark contradiction.
It is, and the sources push us to confront the fact that the architects of some of the worst atrocities, the Holocaust, apartheid system, state-sponsored purges, these weren't ignorant fanatics, were they?
No, often the opposite.
Far from it. Many were highly intelligent individuals. They held advanced degrees from prestigious universities: law, philosophy, engineering, medicine, you name it. Their intellectual capabilities were often immense. Their ability to analyze, plan, organize, persuade their intelligence in that technical sense was undeniable.
But that intelligence was disconnected.
Completely disconnected from any sense of shared humanity, from empathy, from moral restraint. It became a cold, calculating instrument used to design and implement systems of oppression and murder with chilling efficiency.
So their education didn't make them wiser, it just made them more effective at being evil.
That's the horrifying conclusion the sources point to. They became, as the material suggests, efficient monsters. Their highly developed analytical minds were turned towards solving the logistical and political problems of carrying out mass atrocities. Their competence amplified the horror.
That's a deeply disturbing thought. But is this just a historical artifact, or does this danger, this disconnect between intelligence and character still exist today?
Oh, it persists. Absolutely. It just takes on different, maybe more subtle forms in our modern society, our economy, our politics. We see the same dynamic high intelligence deployed without a grounding in character playing out all around us, often in respectable white-collar settings.
Okay, let's look at the modern examples the source material provides. Where do we see this efficient menace now? Maybe starting with finance.
Right. Think about the brilliant financial engineer, someone with exceptional mathematical talent, deep understanding of economic models, often with PhDs from top schools. They aren't engaging in simple theft. Instead, they design incredibly complex, opaque financial products. Things like certain kinds of derivatives, or convoluted debt structures, or maybe predatory lending schemes hidden behind layers of jargon.
The complexity itself becomes a tool.
Exactly. The high intelligence is used specifically to obscure risk, to bypass regulations, maybe to manipulate market sentiment in ways that benefit a few insiders. It allows for massive profits to be extracted, often while the systemic risks are spread out, or the losses fall on ordinary peoples. Pensioners, small investors who couldn't possibly understand the intricate mechanisms being used against them. The skill serves private gain at public cost.
So intelligence is used to exploit, not to build trust. And this isn't just in finance, right? The sources mention engineering and product design too.
Yes. Consider a highly skilled engineer who knows exactly how to design a durable, long-lasting, resource-efficient product. They have the technical intelligence to do that. But instead, perhaps under market pressure or just chasing profits, they deliberately design planned obsolescence into the product. They build it to break down or become outdated after a specific calculated period.
Forcing people to buy replacements they wouldn't otherwise need.
Precisely. They're using their intelligence not to solve the consumer's underlying need effectively, but to create a cycle of dependency and consumption. It wastes resources, exploits consumers, and it represents a clear failure of character choosing profit over durability and sustainability, even when you have the skill to do better.
And this dynamic has moved very quickly into the digital world, hasn't it? The sources talk about data science.
This is a huge area. Think about a talented data scientist, someone skilled in statistics, machine learning, maybe even behavioral psychology. They can build incredibly powerful algorithms. But the crucial question is, what is the goal of that algorithm? Is it designed for accuracy, fairness, user well-being? Or is it purely optimized to maximize engagement, clicks, ad revenue, screen time, regardless of the consequences?
And those consequences can be serious. The sources mention algorithmic bias.
Right. Where bias is present in the historical data used to train the algorithm, biases related to race, gender, socioeconomic status aren't corrected for. Instead, the algorithm, with its high intelligence, learns, automates, and even amplifies those biases at scale. This can lead to discriminatory outcomes in critical areas, like loan applications, hiring decisions, even criminal justice sentencing. The intelligence creates efficient injustice.
And there's the issue of addiction, too.
Yes, that's perhaps even more insidious. Using that understanding of psychology, variable rewards, social pressure, cognitive biases, data scientists can intentionally design platforms and content feeds to be addictive. They leverage their intellectual skills to hijack our attention mechanisms, keeping users hooked to maximize engagement metrics, often with little regard for the quality of the content or the impact on mental health. Intelligence provides the tools for manipulation. Character would ask whether those tools should be used that way.
And then there's the political realm. This feels like a very visible example of King's warning today.
Absolutely. The eloquent politician or pundit. Someone with high verbal intelligence, a masterful understanding of rhetoric, crowd psychology, how to frame narratives for media consumption. They can use these intellectual skills, this communication prowess, not to build bridges or seek truth, but to intentionally sow division, to find scapegoats, to erode trust in institutions, and ultimately to undermine democratic norms for political gain.
They become incredibly efficient at achieving destructive ends.
Exactly. Hyper efficient. So the core warning echoing from King through this analysis is really stark, isn't it? When we educate primarily for competence, for skills, for intelligence alone, we're not just failing to cultivate virtue. We might actually be doing something much worse.
Which is?
We're potentially arming individuals with incredible power to achieve their goals, whatever those goals may be, without ever installing the internal compass needed to ask, is this goal actually right? Is it just? What are the consequences for others? We're creating sophisticated tools without the wisdom to wield them responsibly.
Okay, so we've thoroughly explored the dangers of intelligence without character, the efficient menace. But the argument doesn't stop there, does it? We also need to consider the flip side. What happens when you have good intentions, strong character, but lack the necessary intelligence or competence?
Right, this is the inverse imbalance, and while it might seem less threatening because the intent isn't malicious, the sources argue it's still deeply problematic. It leads to ineffectual action or even unintentional harm.
Character without intelligence. Good heart, but maybe not the sharpest tools in the shed, so to speak.
You could put it that way. The source material talks about this as hollow sentiment. You can have the deepest empathy, the purest desire to help, the strongest moral convictions, but if you lack the critical thinking skills, the technical knowledge, or the strategic competence to actually understand the complexities of a problem and implement solutions effectively, your good intentions can sadly pave the way to failure, or worse.
Can you give some examples of this, where well-meaning actions go wrong due to a lack of, say, critical intelligence?
Sure. Think about a passionate activist or advocate. They are deeply committed to a cause, maybe social justice or environmental protection. They champion a particular policy because it feels right, it sounds compassionate.
Okay, sounds good so far.
But let's say they lack a deep understanding of the underlying economic forces, or the sociological dynamics, or even the basic administrative realities involved. Their well-intentioned policy, once implemented, might have unforeseen ripple effects. It could inadvertently harm the very community it was designed to help, perhaps by disrupting local economies or creating perverse incentives they didn't anticipate.
So the passion was there, the character was there, but the analytical intelligence to foresee the consequences wasn't.
Exactly. They failed to rigorously analyze the system or model the second and third order effects. Good intentions weren't enough. Effective critical intelligence was also needed.
What about in public service?
That's another classic example. Imagine someone who enters public service with a genuine, selfless desire to make a difference. Their character is impeccable. They want to fight poverty, improve schools, fix infrastructure. But they lack the necessary management skills. They don't have the competence to navigate complex bureaucracies, manage large budgets effectively, analyze performance data, or implement programs efficiently.
So it's not corruption, just incompetence.
Right. The result isn't necessarily malice, but it can be crippling inefficiency. Essential services don't get delivered properly, programs fail to reach the people who need them most, resources get wasted. The good intentions are there, the character is strong, but the lack of practical, administrative, or analytical intelligence means the positive impact just doesn't happen. The system grinds down due to a lack of competence, despite the good heart at the helm.
And this plays out in everyday life too, especially with information or maybe misinformation.
Oh, absolutely. We see this constantly now. Think about the well-meaning person, maybe a concerned parent or community member, who comes across some alarming information online about, say, public health or climate change or a new technology. They genuinely believe they've found some hidden truth and feel a moral obligation out of care for others to share it widely. Their intention is protective, compassionate,
But
but they may lack the scientific literacy, the critical thinking skills to evaluate the source, to check the evidence, to understand the methodology, or to spot logical fallacies. So, despite their good character and intentions, they become powerful amplifiers of harmful misinformation, potentially causing real damage to public health or social trust, all while believing they're doing the right thing.
they become, as you said before, a compassionate conduit for chaos.
It's a good way to phrase it. So the synthesis here, the takeaway from looking at both imbalances is really crucial. Compassion alone, character alone, without the intelligence to understand complex systems and act effectively within them, often just results in, well, empty gestures.
No.
Or worse, unintended negative consequences.
It feels good, but doesn't do much good.
Precisely. And that leads directly back to King's central thesis. Building a better world, a more just and functional society, requires both. We need people who are not just fundamentally good people, but also demonstrably smart people, smart in how they analyze problems, smart in how they devise solutions, smart in how they implement change.
Warm hearts guided by sharp minds.
That's the goal. Focusing only on character without developing intelligence leads to ineffective sentimentality. Focusing only on intelligence without cultivating character leads to potential menace. True education has to strive for both, always together.
Okay, so we've established the what and the why. Intelligence plus character is the goal. Separating them is dangerous. But that brings us to the really tough part, the how. How do we actually do this in practice? How can schools, universities, training programs genuinely weave these two pillars together so they reinforce each other? Because, as you said, it can't just be one standalone ethics class tacked onto the schedule, right? That won't cut it. It has to be deeper, more integrated.
Absolutely not. That's the core challenge for institutions. It requires a fundamental rethinking of curriculum, teaching methods, and even the underlying culture. It can't be an add-on, it has to be pervasive. The first strategy the sources point to is this idea of integrating ethical considerations directly into every subject, not just the humanities.
So taking ethics out of its silo and making it a lens for looking at everything else.
Exactly. We usually think of literature or philosophy classes as the place for moral debate, and they are important. But the real transformation happens when you apply that same ethical scrutiny to highly technical fields.
Like science. How would that work?
We'll take a cutting-edge biology class dealing with something like CRISPR gene editing technology. It's not enough to just teach the students how the technology works, the mechanics of it. The curriculum must also include rigorous discussion and debate about the ethics. Should we edit the human germline? Under what conditions? Who decides? What are the potential long-term societal consequences? What about equity of access? The technical how must be paired with the ethical why and whether.
So you're building the moral reasoning alongside the scientific understanding. What about in fields like computer science or engineering, which have such a huge impact now?
Critically important there. A computer science program shouldn't just train students to write efficient code or build complex systems. It needs to deeply integrate discussions about data privacy, recognizing data as a form of power and user trust. It needs to force students to grapple with algorithmic bias, how their code, their intelligent creation, could perpetuate or even amplify existing societal inequalities if they aren't careful and ethically aware.
They need to understand the social responsibility that comes with building the digital world.
Precisely. They're not just coding, they're shaping society. Similarly, engineering students learning to design bridges or power grids need to ask more than just, is it strong or is it efficient? They need to ask, efficient for whom? Who benefits from this project? Who might be harmed or displaced? Is this infrastructure resilient and equitable for all communities or just the privileged ones? The technical problem solving has to be inseparable from questions of justice and fairness.
And this integration must be especially rigorous in professional schools, business, law, medicine.
Absolutely essential there, maybe even more challenging because the pressures towards pure efficiency or profit can be so intense. In business school, for instance, ethics can't be just one required course that students try to get out of the way. It needs to be the framework for analyzing everything: finance, marketing strategies, management decisions.
So a finance class wouldn't just teach models for maximizing returns.
No, it would also have to spend significant time debating the ethical assumptions behind those models, like the whole shareholder versus stakeholder debate. Is a company's only duty to its shareholders, or does it have real responsibilities to employees, customers, the community, the environment?
That's a fundamental challenge to the efficiency model.
It is. It forces students to ask, efficiency at doing what? Just making money or creating broader, sustainable value? And the same applies intensely in law and medicine. Doctors need to wrestle with resource allocation dilemmas, patient rights, end-of-life care ethics, not just diagnostics. Lawyers need to confront the tension between zealous advocacy for a client and the duty to truth and justice.
The specialized knowledge and the ethical application have to be learned together.
They have to be fused. Now, beyond what we teach, the sources also stress that how we teach is equally important for building character alongside intelligence. The pedagogy itself matters.
What kind of teaching methods foster both?
Well, one key shift is moving away from purely individualistic, competitive learning environments where everyone's just trying to beat everyone else for the top grade. The sources advocate for more collaborative learning, group projects, team-based problem solving. These require students to apply their intelligence to solve complex tasks together.
And the character part comes from?
It comes from the process itself. They have to learn teamwork, communication, how to handle disagreements respectfully, how to share responsibility, how to manage resources fairly within the group, how to deal with joint failure. That is character development in action applied directly to an intellectual challenge.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
The Socratic method, teaching through questioning, inquiry-based learning, is highlighted as particularly powerful for developing both pillars simultaneously.
How so?
Well, when a teacher guides students with probing questions, challenging their assumptions, forcing them to explain their reasoning, that directly builds critical thinking skills. That's the intelligence part. But at the same time, the process forces students to articulate their own values, their underlying beliefs, and then defend those values publicly under scrutiny from their peers and the teacher.
They have to stand behind their reasoning.
Exactly. That constant practice of articulating and defending a principled stance, of having to be intellectually honest about their own positions, is a powerful way to build moral clarity and fortitude. It forces them to connect their thinking to their values.
So curriculum integration, collaborative, and inquiry-based teaching. What else contributes to this synthesis?
This next one is subtle, but maybe the most powerful teacher of all: the hidden curriculum.
The hidden curriculum, what's that?
It's all the implicit lessons students learn, not from the official syllabus, but just by observing how the institution itself operates. The school's culture, its values and practice. Students are incredibly perceptive. They watch everything. They absorb the real priorities of the institution, regardless of what the mission statement says.
So we need to look at the institution's own character.
Precisely. We have to ask hard questions. Does the school culture genuinely reward integrity? Or does it implicitly tolerate cheating, plagiarism, a win-at-all-costs attitude, perhaps by looking the other way or having weak enforcement?
Does it walk the talk on fairness and respect?
Right. How does the institution treat its own people? Especially the most vulnerable, maybe students with disabilities, minority students, or even the janitorial and support staff. If students see the university disrespecting its lowest paid workers, any lectures on social justice will ring hollow. They learn from the example set.
And institutional courage matters too.
Hugely. Does the leadership stand up for its principles like academic freedom or equity, even when faced with pressure from powerful donors, political groups, or angry alumni? Or does it cave easily? Students see that. They learn whether character actually matters when real power or money is on the line. The hidden curriculum teaches powerful lessons about what the institution truly values.
Okay, that's a big one. Is there a final strategy for weaving intelligence and character together?
Yes. One more practical strategy emphasized is actively championing service learning or required civic engagement.
So connecting classroom learning directly to real community needs.
Exactly. This forces students to take their theoretical knowledge, their intellectual skills, and apply them in the real world, specifically in service to others. It makes the connection between competence and responsibility explicit. The sources give great examples. Imagine engineering students using their technical skills, that's the intelligence, to design something practical for a community in need, like a low-cost water filter system or adapting technology for people with disabilities.
They're using their smarts for good, basically.
Yes, and in doing so, they are actively practicing empathy, understanding different perspectives, taking social responsibilities seriously. They see firsthand that the purpose of their specialized skill isn't just to get a high-paying job, but to contribute something meaningful.
It makes social responsibility tangible, not just an abstract idea.
It makes it functional, measurable, and integral to their education. This active application of high-level intelligence, guided by a clear moral purpose and character commitment, is perhaps the ultimate embodiment of King's vision of true education.
So when we really step back and look at this blueprint, intelligence plus character, it feels like a powerful rejection of how we often talk about education today, doesn't it? That narrow, almost cynical transactional view. Get skills, get job, get money. This vision replaces it with something much deeper.
It really does. It reclaims education as this profoundly transformative act. It's not just about job training, it's about cultivating whole human beings. People who are skilled, yes, but also ethically grounded, socially responsible, and capable of wisdom.
And that quote from King, back in 1947, it still feels incredibly relevant, almost urgent today.
It absolutely does. It stands as this timeless ethical challenge, really, to everyone involved in education: students, teachers, administrators, policymakers, parents, all of us. It forces us to rethink how we measure success. Is a graduate's worth really just their starting salary or the brand name on their diploma?
Or is this something more profound?
King's argument suggests the true measure is their long-term contribution, or potentially their detriment to the broader human project. Are they making the world better, more just, more sustainable?
So the aim isn't just churning out smart people who can solve complex technical problems efficiently.
No. The ultimate goal, as this framework makes so clear, is to cultivate wise and good people. People who have the sharp, critical intelligence needed to truly understand the incredibly complex challenges facing our world.
And crucially,
Who also possess the moral character, the courage, the empathy, and the resilience to then tackle those problems in ways that are just equitable and compassionate. It's about prioritizing wisdom over mere cleverness or efficiency.
that is, it's a huge task. An awesome responsibility, really. Difficult to achieve, and maybe a goal we never perfectly reach but have to keep striving for.
It's definitely the work of a lifetime, for individuals and for institutions.
Which brings us to the final thought, the challenge for you listening to this deep dive. We've explored this idea that true education demands this synthesis, this focus on wisdom over mere efficiency.
So the question we want to leave you with is this. How do you actually measure the success of the educational institutions in your own sphere? Your local schools, the university you attended or support, the training programs in your field?
Think about it honestly. Are they right now primarily focused on sharpening those tools, building intelligence, skills, efficiency?
Or are they genuinely, actively, pervasively working to cultivate that moral compass? The character, the empathy, the sense of responsibility, the wisdom to guide how those tools are ultimately used.
And if you find there's an imbalance, if the focus is too much on just the intelligence part, what needs to change?
What conversations need to happen? What systems, what priorities, what cultural norms within those institutions need to shift to truly embrace this more holistic, more human, and ultimately more vital goal of cultivating intelligence plus character?
That's the question to wrestle with. And that was your deep dive into this foundational blueprint for true education. Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you next time.